قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء
هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to Finding Me on the ITV networks. A very interesting guest, I might add, today, and I think perhaps the kind of people that we need in our community, but much more in terms of the younger generation who should look up to these role models and start emulating the work that they have done. They have set the footprints, they have opened the legacies. It's time for us to take up the mantle. With me is Ihsaan Higgins. He is an attorney with De Klerk and Van Gent. He has a tremendous activist history. I read about some of the work that he's done, a human rights lawyer who's also championed the cause of the hought and fishing industry, and as well as many issues of the headscarf in South Africa and polygamous marriages in terms of Muslim personal law. But what is important for me today is Ihsaan's role in the latest case with the South African National Defence Force, and that is Fatima Isaacs. But we will walk those steps through as we talk about Ihsaan's activism as a lawyer. Assalamu alaikum and welcome, Ihsaan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And thank you, really. I know your schedule was really tight, but you made this time, and I'm really thrilled that we can talk about these issues, because I found that in terms of the Muslim community, we have tremendous potential, but somehow there isn't that coherence of that potential, that, coming together to pool your talents so that you are far more constructive. And part of that, one of the ideas that tapped into this is your establishing of the Legal Cafe very many years ago, in which you felt that it was time to do something more productive. But tell us a little bit about your history.
Oh, it's a difficult question to speak about my. I have a long history of activism since school days, early school days. I'm talking at age 14. I was already quite active, politically and involved with the community, on various levels. And of course, maybe that motivated me to become a lawyer, because then you realize, you're going to have some power in that regard, that being a lawyer, representing people. And I studied at both UCT and at UWC, and that gave me a bit of, at UCT during the period of apartheid. And of course, we were a very limited number of black students there, and even more limited in terms of Muslim students. And we went to the extent at that point in time to go out to communities, because people all thought UCT at the time was an ivory tower, but we had activism there, great activism, and there was some great activism that came from that area. Then, of course, when Nelson Mandela came out of jail and UWC became the focal point, and all the greatest lawyers went to lecture at UWC, it made sense to once LLB at UWC. But that wasn't the only reason. The other reason was there was a bit of a quota system at UCT. And I certainly didn't I wasn't part of that quota that had the privilege at that point in time to study LLB, but it turned out good. It was for the best that myself and a group of people from UCT went to UWC. And some of those people also became great activists, and one of those people I'm thinking of immediately is Huda Faker, who was instrumental in this Muslim personal law case that was recently launched at the Cape High Court. And hopefully it's going to be, concluded at the Constitutional Court. So she was one of the people that moved over with me. There was other people like Kashif Wickham, who was quite politically active. There was Istiak, Amin, Jakes. We were a very, very nice group. And of course, the person that I ended up, going into legal practice with is Faisal Bardin, who's also quite a lawyer that's active within the community. So we were a very nice group that moved over to UWC, and of course our activism really, became pronounced there. And we were quite active within street law at that point in time. In fact, street law wasn't it wasn't on the map at that point in time. So when we got there, we realized, you know what, we can do a lot more with this organization. We had a great person there. We had Desmond Grootboom, who was a great activist from Pontyville. But of course, with our assistance, you know, we took street law to another level, and we went out into areas like Sierras, Overberg.
So was this happening only in the Cape, or was there simultaneously something of what you were doing happening in other provinces?
At that point in time, we were very insular. For us, you know, South Africa was in the Cape. But, you know, you obviously, as you go along, you realize, you know what, you start linking up with other activists from other areas, other political people from other areas, and you start having more of a national focus. But at that point in time as a student, I will say it, I was very much Cape-based.
And so then how was Legal Cafes formed?
No, Legal Cafe came many years later.
Right.
But it was on the back of how we dealt with in terms of with street law. So Legal Cafe, okay, let me just follow on there. So in 1997, when I was done now with my articles, and I had a bit of a stint with Project Vote, where we taught people throughout the country how to vote through voter education. I was the national project manager. I was probably about 24 years old at the time. I had no clue what I was doing generally, but you just did it because it had to be done. Because there was no precedent for voter education at that point in time in this country. So of course we had to learn from what we could find. And there was very limited internet usage at that point in time. So after a stint of voter education, I then moved to, I went to do my articles, 1 year of articles only, because I was very fortunate. That was the year that the government introduced a thing where you could actually do practical legal school. So I did practical legal school at night, and during the day I was in full-time employment. And at that point I was, after voter education at Project Vote, I moved to street law national. Then I was involved with street law and doing it as the national project manager. And I had about 18 offices throughout the country that I was responsible for. That was also a very nice stint. And then after that stint, I was involved with, when they wrote the constitution of this country, I was a lobbyist for Project Vote. And I spent every single day of my time while they were writing the constitution and deliberating about the South African constitution. I was in Parliament, sitting in the chamber. It was actually under the chairpersonship of our current president, Cyril Ramaphosa. And of course, Minister Naledi Pandor had quite an active role in writing the constitution. So it's quite nice to see those people are still in power.
But you know, with the new generation, there's a contention about the Constitution, right? And about aspects of it that, you know, very active Black consciousness students are beginning to question the validity and the compromise in reaching that Constitution.
I think whatever happened at that point in terms of if there was compromises, whatever happened was, the bottom line is we had a document to work from. And it's the reason why today, people like myself and many other lawyers, we have a document to work from. It's not a perfect document. We are questioning,
Aspects of it, yeah.
Aspects of it all the time. We're challenging pieces of legislation. And of course, this has an impact on what we see today. So yes, of course, there will be a problem with.
So you have a progressive document, something that can be challenged. But do you find, or do you feel that the legal culture in South Africa, especially amongst, you know, the lawyers, the judges, even the advocates and attorneys, has that culture changed, or is it still very much dominated by the old mindset? So you have a progressive document, but the people who are reading the document do not have that mindset.
I think the biggest challenge comes in where we have old laws in this country. Many of those laws emanating from the apartheid era. And there's many institutions that has not changed their policy, you know, relating to those laws. Or maybe the law may have changed, but there's still certain policies that was informed by those old laws. And of course you're going to have problems. I mean, this particular case that we're dealing with now, the Scarf case, is one of those cases, I think, whereby people that within the military, the South African National Defence Force, some individual members, they have not embraced what is contained in the Constitution. Section 9 of the Constitution, Section 15 of the Constitution, very clear on our right to religious freedom in this country. cultural freedom, language freedom, all those types of things. But some people, they take the policy, you know, the whole, what you call probably in Afrikaans, reels is reels, you know. They use those reels as like rules is rules issue, and they make it their own. But they don't bother to look at the Constitution.
So for them, the rules is the higher order, even higher than the Constitution.
Exactly. And look, maybe we cannot blame them. Maybe they
It's
have not
the
been
mindset.
schooled.
Yes.
You know, when they started, and I'm not just talking about the military, I'm talking about throughout the departments in South Africa. You know, if your leader within an organization has not embraced, you know, the Constitution, then of course everybody else will follow that process.
So the ethical training and even the actual legal or capacity training is lacking then in the institutions.
Look, we're very fortunate in this case, whereby we have a very progressive minister within the Defence Force, and there has been many organizations, including myself and others, that actually petitioned the minister through the media, through correspondence, through various means, and we petitioned that there should be ministerial intervention, knowing that we had the Royal House of Mandela petitioning the minister to resolve this matter of Major Isaacs. We've had Samnet.
Yes, the Muslim Professional Networks, yes.
They also petitioned. There has been various lawyers petitioning the minister to say, listen, please intervene. We're not saying that the minister can solve the problem, but the minister can intervene. And the minister has rose to the occasion in a budget speech where she said that, you know, she would like to have an amicable solution to this. So she has not told the SAN if you must do this. She was not prescriptive. I think she was very diplomatic in saying, try to find an amicable solution. So, and that's a good thing, because I believe that the wisdom of that assertion came from the Constitution. The Constitution is clear. These are the issues. We are prepared to go to court on these issues. We are prepared to go get an interdict in the High Court. We are prepared for the High Court to refer it to the Constitutional Court to confirm that the order given to Major Isaacs was actually not a proper order. It was possibly unlawful if one tests it against the Constitution. However, that's not the route that we as South Africans should always go.
Yes, you shouldn't be chasing the law all the time.
We know the law is there. You know, we know we are protected by the law. But it's also our ability to sit down and dialogue.
Yes.
And through that dialogue, we'll find solutions.
So I'm glad you raised the issue about dialogue and actually lobbying as a community. But we have to go to a break. When we come back, I want to raise this with you further. We'll see you after the break.
بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار الظلم وحلا في مولده النغم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the second segment of Finding Me today in the ITV networks with my very special guest, Ihsaan Higgins. Ihsaan represents Fatima Isaacs, who has recently been charged by the South African National Defence Force for wearing a headscarf under her military headgear, and he's defending the case. But Ihsaan has done far more than that, and I think we're going to come to that in the discussion that now follows. Ihsaan, you know, before we went into the break, you were speaking about the potential to dialogue. In other words, the ability to come forward and constructively put forward your presentation and your argument rather than to always be reactive. But the problem that I find, and perhaps you can enlighten me and say if you agree with this or not, that in the South African Muslim society, where we have this pool of talent, where we have the ability and the potential to be far more stronger lobbyists, everybody retires to the individual silos, you know, reluctant to get involved in a networking process. It's just perhaps maybe in the last 10-15 years where we're seeing the young professionals coming out and now starting to say we need to work together as a group, like how you have in the USK, who represents, you know, Muslims, etc. And we have a Muslim Lawyers Association, but I have not found them effective at all. So in many of the things that I have, you know, written out or reached out, it seems to be lacking. Now, in this case, this is a public issue. It's a Muslim issue in a sense that it affects many of us in the Muslim community. There is the potential for it to escalate if we don't deal with it now and set a precedent, because Islamophobia is on the rise. So we don't know what elements will be entering into the state or into the institution and, filtering the mindset. In this regard, how do you find, the support and the ideas developing within the community and within the professionals to now start creating those very solid frameworks that we need in terms of, charting the way forward, so that hopefully this is, cut now at the right at the start, but should it reappear, we know how to deal with it.
Okay. Thank you for that question. I think it's a very, very valid question, and it's high time that, we need to analyze, what's contained in that question. I think our first issue is leadership. I do believe we may have some very capable leadership within South Africa and within the Muslim community, but I do not think that they're showing leadership, strength, by bringing the community together. Because you can be a leader and you can be knowledgeable within certain elements of leadership, but we do not have a proper leadership structure. And I know some of my very beloved people, that I know and that I work with from the Muslim Judicial Council, from organizations like ICSA, UCSA, whoever. Some of them will not be happy when they hear these things. But the reality is they are not showing leadership. When I think of leadership, it's basically bringing people together under a common agenda. Yes. We do not have a common agenda. When we have a crisis, whenever there's a crisis, we had a crisis 14, 15 years ago with Fairouz Adams when she was dismissed at Worcester Correctional Services. When they fired her, they took away her rights, they practically were in the process of evicting her from the state premises. At that point in time, people come together. Oh no, we must do something for Fairouz Adams. And
it's always temporary, and then you disappear.
And of course, we fought. I was involved in that case, and I fought it, and we've successfully concluded an agreement with the state. It was quite ugly, actually, to be honest. That this woman had to be subjected to these, these acts of
aggression, almost. Yeah,
it was Islamophobia. Yeah. So the point is, that was thing, and of course everybody rallied, and it was. I threatened to bring 50,000 people on a march into town, and of course when I leaked the document to correctional services to tell them we're going to do this, and then I was contacted by the minister, and the minister then got the former DG, he's passed away now, Vernie Peterson, to negotiate with me, and we negotiated a settlement. Fine. Well, part of the settlement was that they were going to review the dress code for Muslim women, and I was happy with that.
So have they done it?
This is where the funny thing is. I get a call maybe about 2 weeks ago, now 13 years after that thing was signed, to tell me they're busy with it. 13 years later. And I think it was only in the wake of this new matter that they now realizing, we need to do something. They made the agreement with me 13 years ago. Nobody followed it up, from our ulama bodies. And that's why I'm saying it's about leadership. We need a proper dialogue on Muslim leadership in this country. We need to get together. We need to tell each other what we need to say. We need to identify our differences. We need to identify our commonalities, and we need to set a proper agenda in terms of going forward.
Yeah, we need to build strengths in what our talking points are, isn't it? Yes.
Islamophobia is being the biggest thing at the moment. Islamophobia is so rife in Europe. Every country in Europe is actually challenged by the whole notion of Islamophobia. The people, women are not allowed to wear scarf in places like France. There's a big lobby group in the Netherlands, in Germany. It's everywhere. There's right-wing lobby groups.
So South Africans are actually silly to wait for the trouble to come before they start preparing themselves, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, these beautiful precedents, even as far as Canada, places like Canada, Scotland, they've already put things in place for Muslims within the armed forces, within the police services. All we need to do is we can learn from these things, but we don't. We're fighting each other. Look at the issue of Muslim personal law. In Singapore, where there's a very, very small minority of Muslims as opposed to Chinese, they've been doing Muslim personal law for the past 40 years, more than 40 years. I spent about 2 weeks in the Sharia court many years ago, and I was amazed how beautifully their constitution and Islam kind of works together.
And it should, but it makes sense, it should.
Total harmony. There's a Qadi who is very knowledgeable in all aspects of Islamic law. He makes sure that the Islamic law is not violated by the Singaporean constitution. And there hasn't been problems. It's fine. So why do we as a Muslim community not look at those precedents instead of having issues with ourselves? What's the length of your beard? What's the length of your kurta? You know?
But that's a problem.
Yeah. So these are not really issues that we need to occupy our time with.
No, but then again, it comes again to education. I think there is a deficit in terms of education of the scholarship in South Africa. They might be particularly good on one aspect of the fiqh, but when it comes to living as minorities, in a non-Muslim country, they have not learnt this fiqh, nor are they knowledgeable.
There's special skills attached to living in a minority Muslim country.
Yes.
You cannot assume the type of legal system that prevails in places like Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and of course, and I really right now know who wants to be like Saudi Arabia.
So the point is, we need to take the lessons of minority countries. But I think the first thing is very critical and important. We need to establish our commonalities and settle our differences, because our differences are not that big.
No.
Muslim personal law, it's something we can settle tomorrow if we have the right people around the table.
Exactly.
And
yeah, I spoke to Munir Abdurrauf just 2 weeks ago, and he explained the whole process, and I was like really impressed, because I was one of those who was in a way kind of brainwashed into believing that, it was a problematic bill until Munir explained everything.
in the Asam case, when we did the Asam case in the Constitutional Court, first in the Cape High Court, we took it to the Constitutional Court, and Mrs. Asam won the case.
Yes.
And
So for the benefit of the viewers, she was in a polygamous marriage, and she was not allowed to inherit from her husband's estate.
yeah, but it's bigger than that.
Okay.
The other issue was, this woman wasn't even aware she was in a polygamous marriage.
Oh, wow.
Her husband married while she went on Hajj. When she came back, her husband told her on the airport, I married someone. So of course when he died, because she thought he sorted it out, and of course nothing was sorted out. When he died, he was still married to 2 women. And then of course the master decided that he's not allowing intestate succession, because this woman is in a polygamous marriage, which she wasn't even aware of. So the reality is, the government was forced to change the provisions of the Intestate Succession Act, and of course the Maintenance of Survivors Act. But the reality of it is, it was difficult to do that case. Why? Because the opposition came from our own community.
Yeah, that's it's the same like black activists. They feel on the one hand, they're fighting for the rights of black people, but on the other hand, you're using your one hand to fight their own people who are coming at you.
I've been accused of many things. Like ulama coming to me and say, how can you fight? Yeah, I was short of being declared.
But you're Orientalist.
Yeah, but the reality of it is, we need to solve our problems in this country. We can't just every time have a situation where there's a problem and then we go lobby people, to solve our problem for us, like we're doing at the moment. We need to take the bull by the horns. I mean, look at the politics. We entertain every single political party, and we give them nice tea and kusistas, and they leave and say, now we got the support of the Muslim community. The Muslim community has not given that political party the ultimatum and say, listen, we will support you, but we want 5 of our people in your top 50 people.
Yeah, because we're not strong enough as a lobby group, nor do we hold the economic power in terms of a coordinated effort.
Yeah.
Might individually, yes, but we have not organized ourselves like other communies do.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a big failure.
And the thing is, it's easy to do it. It's not even difficult.
I agree.
If and I'm going to name it, if the ANC comes to the Muslim Judicial Council, and they say, look, will you support us? The Muslim Judicial Council can say, yes, we support you, but we want so many people, of our own people, in Parliament with you, because if these issues come up or anything that is contrary to the Quran, at least we have noted our objection within that structure.
We're at the end. We have like about 30 seconds left, and I think
Wow, that was quick.
it just brings me to the question of, firstly, do we have the power, or do we just perceive to have the power? Because I mean, the MJC might be able to put a condition forward, but does it have then the following? You understand? So it's all about perceptions. What have we done to manage our perceptions as a South African Muslim community, and to manage the perceptions of others looking at us to say, you know what, this is a strong lobby group?
We need, firstly, good leadership. We do have good leadership. They must consolidate. We need good lawyers. We need to consolidate. We need a war chest, so that when we do take something to court, we're not even worried about where the money is going to come from. Because at the moment, we're doing things pro bono, we're doing it for free, we're asking this one to do for free, and that's not an ideal situation.
We should be organized, and we have the ability to have that war chest. Ihsaan, we're at the end. I just want you to quickly give me a conclusion on the Isaacs case.
The Isaacs case is, it's unfortunate that the government did not drop the charges as yet. However, we are hopeful that they've given us the right for our women now, the right to wear a small scarf under their beret, which is basically covering their hair, which is fine. But they also given us an undertaking. They will develop the uniform policy, and that will incorporate the hijab or the scarf. And then, of course, the issue of they did not drop the charge against Fatima Isaacs, but I am in discussion with one of the generals, and the generals, he's told me, look, we need to go through a process, and he's guided me on the process, and I'm very happy that on the 11th, when I do go on record, I will then also request that military court to give us an opportunity to make representations, and then, of course, those representations will be put before the right committee, and I'm sure they will resolve it. If they do not do it, of course, then we still have an option to go to the Constitutional Court. So I think that's in a nutshell.
So I'd like to say Jazakallah khair for sharing your wonderful words of wisdom with us, and of course your vision. I really hope that more people pick up the mantle, but most importantly that Muslims learn to start networking and to consolidate what they have to offer and what they can do to make this country great again, or shall I say greater. Yeah, I don't know if we were ever great if you look at our history, but hopefully let's make it
we were people that that has been subjected to the worst form of oppression, but we came out good. And as you say, we can be great.
We can do better, certainly. We can shift from being people to attaining what it is to be a part of humanity. Jazakallah khair, fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
قسما بالله رب العالمين ما ارتضينا غير دين الله دين فهو دين الحق دين الأنبياء إنه الإسلام نور وضياء.
هذا الدر وهذه الكلم بمديح الهادي تنتظم ضاءت بالمختار ظلم وحلا في موت